Hello everyone. In this video we are going to see about Alexander Pope. So, um, who is Alexander Pope? What is he famous for? These are all the things which we are going to discuss in this video. Remembered for essay on criticism. We all know that Pope Alexander Pope is a great critic and he is remembered for his essay on criticism. His critical works include Preface to the Works of Shakespeare, The Art of Sinking, The Imitation of the Epistle of Horace to Augustus, and the Preface to the Translation of the Iliad. And then essay on criticism, which contains his most considered canons of literary taste. Okay, and then it is modeled on Horace Ars Poetica, Vidas de Art Poetica, and Boileau Art Poetic. So he had adopted the models from the Latin. Okay, so he has modeled on three writers' works. Okay, it is in the same critical tradition, that is the classical and also a treatise in verse. Then the method of Horace, which we can divide into parts like how we have parts in De Art Poetica and L Art Poetic. So we can divide the method of Horace. In English, Sheffield's essay on satire and essay on poetry, and then Roscommon's essay on translated verse, and Granville's essay upon natural flights in poetry, they are all written in verse format. Okay, and then Pope calls or mentions these works as not an essay on poetry, but he considers this as essay on criticism. Okay, and then definitely he's actually not a poet, but he's a critic. Poetry began with Walter and Denham. We all know that Walter and Denham were the persons from whom the poetry began. Okay, and then gained with Dryden and Addison. So Addison and Dryden are all the persons in whose hands poetry achieved great success. Okay, defines criticism as true taste. Definitely, while we are criticizing a work, we will express only our own thoughts. We will not express the thoughts of others. We will tell or we will write only the thing which is uh, in our mind. Okay, so defines criticism as true taste. It's a gift of nature. Okay, he would have guided by those rules of old, which is learned degrees discovered in human nature, and which therefore are but nature methodized. Okay, but nature methodized. And then study of the ancient models and knowledge of their technique. Definitely, if you are entering into a new field, what are the first thing we will do? Just we will take a glimpse of persons, those who are well versed in that particular field, and we will do a background study on that persons, and we will gain some knowledge in that field. Only then we will enter inside that field with some kind of confidence. Okay, here to the same, before criticizing a particular work, we all know we want to know, we want to have a study on the ancient models, and we should have some knowledge regarding the techniques and what are all the techniques they have applied, and what are all the how to apply those techniques in our work and all. Okay, ancients free to violate their own rules. Those who have lived before the age of Alexander Pope, they are all free to violate their own rules. That is, they can violate their own rules. Pope preferred Sheffield, Roscommon, and Walsh as critics to Dryden. So for some persons, Dryden will be a good critic, but for some persons, he may not. So it is according up to an individual. Okay. So for Pope, he prefers Sheffield, Roscommon, and Walsh as a good persons. A critic is born to judge, as a poet is born to write. Definitely, for what purpose a poet is born? Definitely, he is born to write. Likewise, a critic is born to judge. Okay, and then to judge a poet is only the faculty of poets. We cannot say that anyone can criticize a work. Okay, definitely only it is the faculty of poet who can judge the poet. Okay, Dryden too felt the same way. Okay, but he had good sense enough to see the other side of the argument. Poets are also the most proper, though not the only critics. Judgment by rules is allowed to be the only function of a critic. No one can object to the conclusions he lays down for his work. Particularly, he says judgment by the part rather than by the whole. He considers that uh, we should judge part by part rather than judging it as a whole. And then Quintilian's advice, the oldest of the new and newest of the world. So he is giving an advice that is, we should take the new things from the old and the old things from the new. Okay. Condemns cheap musical devices. So he condemns on cheap musical devices. He needs some kind of enrichment in musical devices. So to quote for cheap musical devices, we can take equal syllables, open vowels, excessive use of monosyllables, stale rhymes, and needless resort to the Alexandrian. Okay. Dr. Johnson has represented these things as representative meter. Okay. And then essay on criticism shows the limitation of the neoclassical system. Okay. So definitely, if you're following some kind of movement, we will have some limitations and restrictions. So in neoclassical system too, there will be some kind of restrictions which Pope had expressed in his work titled Essay on Criticism. Okay. The literary He does not bring the blind imitation. Okay. Just he has expressed the limitations. Superiority over art. Definitely, for some person something will be superior than other, but for some person it may not. It will differ from person to person. So Pope, he admit that superiority of inspiration over art. He calls it lucky license, that is a deviation from rules, no doubt, and but to the same end, to gain the heart of the readers. Poetry is an imitation. This is the main point which many critics will agree with. Okay, poetry is an imitation. Function is to both delight and to instruct. What is the function of the poetry? On one side, when we read a poetry, we should get some kind of pleasure. Along with that, we should be instructed something. So this is the function of the poetry. Though he deviates, he accepts the classical rules. We all know that he has deviated from the main point, but though he deviates, he accepts the classical rules. Okay. To judge Shakespeare by Aristotle's rules, he says it is like judging a man by the laws of one country who acted under the laws of another country. Definitely, we all know that the laws will differ from country to country. So, a person who is acted under the law of one country cannot be judged by the law of another country. So, in the same way, we should not apply Aristotle's rules in order to judge Shakespeare. It is an illogical one. So this is what he is considering, or he is telling. Okay. And then its value to be judged by the extent to which it gains the heart. So I hope you are all familiar with Alexander Pope, how his writing was, and what are the techniques he had used and all. Okay. So if you have any doubts regarding Alexander Pope, you can post it in the comment box. I will clarify that in the next upcoming videos. Okay. I hope you're all clear with what I have discussed so far. Okay. Thank you.